Good morning, everybody. This morning's proceedings are going to be broadcast with a 10-minute delay. Those with mobile devices may use them to report what they've heard in the hearing, but only 10 minutes after the event that they're reporting. They may not be used for recording or photography. Yes.
I swear by Almighty God.
I swear by Almighty God
That the evidence I shall give.
that the evidence I shall give
Shall be the truth.
shall be the truth,
The whole truth.
the
Mr. Renwick, to the extent that you can you describe how Roger's death affected you and the family?
Well, as I've said, Roger was central to the family. Everyone loved him. I think the effect, my parents has lost a son, and basically no one should have to bury their son. You expect your son to bury you. Following Roger's death, at Christmas time, we missed him. To this day, I miss his presence. And I think I've now got grandchildren. I think if he was around, he'd be doting, with my grands. Everyone loved Roger. He was central to the family. He cracked jokes. He made everyone feel good about themselves. He was a peacemaker. He was there for everybody who needed help. He got on very well with not just members of the family, but elderly people. He put himself out of the way to help them to cross the road, find out how they were, and he'd run chores for them. To this day, we still miss him, particularly my parents. And, I recall during the time, Roger had this cyclical, illness where he was happy and, highs and lows. I think it's bipolar. But the times he was well, I've lost my train of thought now, but he was able to bring a smile to everyone's face. To this day, every time, I've always gets reminded by people who I don't know, but they knew Roger, and they would say to me, I knew Roger, and if I had a penny for the number of times that someone said to me, I knew Roger, I'd be a rich man, because he was well known, in the Tottenham area.
Thank you. It's right that there was an inquest into Roger's death in 2003, isn't there?
Yes.
And that inquest concluded that Roger was unlawfully killed.
Absolutely.
In 2004, that inquest verdict was quashed by the High Court following a judicial review challenge, is that right?
That's correct, yes.
And in 2005, the Crown Prosecution Service decided not to charge any of the police officers involved with criminal offences, is that right?
That's correct.
Yes. We have, Mr. Renwick, the statements that were made by the family in response to both the 2004 High Court decision and the 2005 decision by the CPS, because you've exhibited those to your witness statement, and those describe the impact and the reaction of the family to those decisions. I'm not proposing we call them up at this stage, but they can be found at A4 and A5, UCPI 37870 and 37871. Mr. Renwick, the focus of most of the rest of my questions now is going to be on the period 1999 to 2000. That's principally because this is the period in which, as far as we can see, the campaign was being reported on by SDS undercover officers. So if we don't cover those later matters that I've just referred to in any further detail, it's important to emphasise that the evidence that you have provided about the inquest, about the judicial review and the CPS decision are all in evidence before the inquiry, and they will be considered in due course by the chair. Turning to the formation of the Family Justice Campaign, it's right, isn't it? It was set up in January 1999.
Yes, it was. It started, the genesis of the campaign was in Victor, my cousin's house. We decided we have to address the negative press that Roger was having. He wasn't a demon that he was being portrayed. yes, he had mental issues, but he was not a demon, and so we had to do something to address that. And the campaign was started to get the truth of what happened, and if any of the officers did wrong, then they should be held accountable. Because, I mean, Roger would have been alive if they had not laid hands on him. And then to start a campaign to demonize him, you know, a typical stereotype. He was big, you know, strong. You know, those to you know, my mind are sort of racial stereotypes. You know, it's some people's worst fears. And he was not like that. So we had to address that.
It was, as you say, initiated by your cousin, and I think you've recounted in your witness statement, recalling being at the hospital in the period actually before Roger was declared dead, and your cousin had grabbed hold of your arm and said, "Bern, we can't let them get away with this." Do you recall that?
That's correct, yes. My cousin Victor, I mean, we were experiencing the loss of Roger. It was traumatic. He was with us one day, phoned me up in the morning to wish me happy birthday, and he was no longer with us. And so, you know, we knew we had to do something. Victor was adamant. I think Victor is his first cousin. So, you know, we had to do something to get to the truth. And as people of colour, you know, justice seems to elude us, so we had to act. We couldn't just let it be, because the police were having a field day, basically, demonising him. And I think it's a tactic they have used in the past. It's like breaking a window and say, "Oh, look at this window, this is what you should be looking at." But the thing is, and it's a diversion away from what they actually did to Roger. You know, to demonize him, to make people believe that, you know, it was justified, their actions were justified.
One of the examples that you gave in your witness statement was about reporting which describes Roger as violent and vociferous.
Yes.
And you say that was disinformation for which the Metropolitan Police were subsequently required to apologise.
Yes, yes.
You also refer in your statement to the demonising of Roger in the press and the media, is that right?
Yes, of course, yeah.
And I think it's right that these factors taken together were what made the family feel that they had no choice but to establish the campaign in January 99.
Yes, that certainly is the case, yeah. I think without the campaign, you know, and the campaign was also to publicise, you know, to make, I mean, when, in the past, I used to hear of people die, you know, when someone died in custody, you'd hear about them in the press, and it was always a negative of that person. And I came across a book called Deadly Silence, I think it was. I can't remember who published it, but I read that book, and there seemed to be a pattern that there's an individual died in custody, there's a demonization of that person, and then it goes to an inquest. And when it eventually gets to an inquest, people tend to remember the demonization of that person, not what was done to them. So I think, I at the time thought it's an art form that the police, you know, exercise in order to shine a light away from their actions. And I mean, if you restrain someone, they will die. You know, it's human nature. You restrain someone, compromise their breathing, they will die. And what they tended to do was to say, "Oh, that person struggled, you know, against, you know, they weren't cooperative."
Just picking up that point that you made about the inquest, I think you've described in your statement that a moment where the forensic pathologist had given statements or made comments to the media outside of the inquest about Roger, providing them with information that was untrue, and for which that individual was subsequently reprimanded. Is that right?
Yes, that was, I think, if I remember rightly, Dr. Patel. He basically, I think he briefed members of the press, and I recall him saying that he was trying to allay fears. Now that incensed the family, because the job of a pathologist is to find out how a person died. His job isn't to allay public fears. You know, his job is to do whatever he has to do to determine the cause of death. The contents of Roger's notes in public, you know, from him, that's not his job. Allaying public fears is not a pathologist's job. So we were very incensed. We complained to the GMC, and we actually had him reprimanded.
Turning then back to the formation of the campaign, and this is something that you mentioned a few minutes ago. The first meeting of that campaign was at your cousin's home, is that right?
That's correct, at Victor's house, yes.
Who attended that meeting? Don't have to refer to names, but just in general terms.
Well, most of all cousins, myself,
Mr. Renwick, we're going to turn now to some of the reporting about the activities of the campaign. Now, the first intelligence report that the inquiry has seen that mentions the campaign is dated the 21st of January 1999. I'm not proposing we turn that one up, but I would like to go to one that's dated 4 days after that, please. It's B2 MPS 0001717. Now, we can see from the top of this document that it is a Metropolitan Police Special Branch intelligence report, and in that table that runs along the top there, we can see reference to the date of that report as the 25th of January 1999. And just slightly further down that bit that's been blown up there, we can see the word title, and next to it the words Windmill Tilter. Can you see that, Mr.
Yes, yes.
So Windmill Tilter is the code name that was given by the SDS to the undercover officer that we know as David Hagen, or HN81. Now, we won't see that name David Hagen in any of these reports, but we might see in some of the ones that we go to this reference Windmill Tilter. And where we see that, we can presume that the intelligence in the report came from David Hagen, okay?
Okay.
Can we just zoom out again, please? Thank you. This is a report of a march which took place on the 24th of January 1999. And I think you say in your statement that this would have been the first event that was organised by the campaign, is that right?
Yes.
And bearing in mind the date of it, 24th of January, then this would have taken place less than a week after Roger died.
That's right, yes.
Is it right that the march was from Roger's flat in Tottenham to the Tottenham police station?
Is that the march where my parents were wearing the T-shirts? Yes, it is, yes.
Can we please just expand the first paragraph of text, please? Thank you.
Oh.
It reads this: the march vigil that took place in Tottenham on the 24th of January 1999 turned into a tense confrontational affair and clearly exhibited the discord that is felt within the black community towards the police. Now, I'm going to revisit in just a moment what you have to say about that description, but for the time being we'll just keep reading, please. So can we then go to the next main paragraph, please? Some 250 persons assembled at the outset of the march outside Sylvester's house. These people were predominantly young black youths of both genders. Pausing there, 250 people, do you think that sounds about right?
There were quite a lot of people. I mean, I didn't at the time guesstimate. I didn't consider how many, but there were quite a lot of people, young, old, a mix of people.
That the description of them consisting of predominantly young black youths of both genders, do you recognise that description?
There were young black youths there, both genders, but also there were my parents and my parents' friends. We had my parents' priest, minister attended. So it wasn't just predominantly black youths.
Okay. Can you bring up the next paragraph, please? And we'll just start on the second sentence, which begins about halfway through the second line, where it says, it was organised and stewarded by the Newham Monitoring Project, NMP, and the SWP, Socialist Workers' Party, had been informed during the build-up to this protest that their presence wasn't welcome. Can you recall if the NMP were involved in organising the stewarding of that event?
I can vaguely remember someone, I mean Gilly Mundy he helped, and I think the NMP, he knew somebody who was in that organisation.
If it assists you, Mr. Renwick, in your witness statement at paragraph 3.2, you say that you think that the NMP did help to organise the stewarding and they were put in contact with the family
Yes,
via the
yeah.
organisation Inquest
Yes.
and the individual Gilly that you've just referred
Yes.
to. Referring to this, the point that we can see in this paragraph about the Socialist Workers' Party's presence not being welcome, do you recall any interaction between the family and the SWP in the lead up to this event?
No, I mean, they have been around with, circulating their leaflets, but we haven't, I mean, I don't have any, I'm not aware of any personal contact with them. They appeared at our functions, but they weren't part of our organising of the function. They were around.
Can we bring up the next paragraph, please? It says this: the event opened with a speech and prayer from a local vicar and the laying of a wreath. It was explained that out of respect for the family, the procession should be silent. Now I'm going to pause there, and I'd like to turn up, please, we'll come back to this report, but I would like to turn up a photograph that I think you've referred to a couple of minutes ago. It's A6 UCPI 37872, please. And on the second page of that, please. Thank you. It's right, isn't it, that this is a photograph of yours and Roger's parents at the start of this vigil?
Yes, that was at Summerhill Road. The door on the left was the entrance into Roger's flat.
Mr. Renwick. I think it's quite clear from your evidence already, but for the avoidance of doubt, the Friends of Roger Sylvester, was that a name that the family campaign ever referred to itself as?
No, absolutely not. We were always Roger Sylvester Justice Campaign, RSJC.
Thank you. That report can come down now, please. Next, we're going to turn to something we've touched on lightly already, which are the examples of reports that you refer to in your witness statement that talk about the Movement for Justice, MFJ, in the context of the family campaign. I'm not going to ask you about all of those reports, but I will just call up two, which are 2 days apart from one another, from around January 2000. The first of those is B16, MPS 0002788. And we can see, if we look at, just expand the table at the top again, please. Thank you. The date of this report, 5th of January 2000. And then can we go to the first main paragraph of this report, please? Thank you. So titled Roger Sylvester Campaign. We can see intelligence there again, that codename Windmill Tilter. It says this: there is to be a vigil outside Tottenham Police Station on Tuesday the 11th of January 2000 at 6 p.m. to mark the first anniversary of the death of Roger Sylvester. His family, who have initiated the vigil, have invited other groups to attend the event, but those with long memories, such as MFJ, will not be attending as they were snubbed by the family when the campaign originally commenced. I think you say in your witness statement that this anniversary vigil was something that was organised by the family campaign, is that right?
Absolutely. It was, yes, we decided to mark that day because, I mean, although the inquest said Roger's death was on the 18th, that was when the life support system was switched off, but the family believed that Roger actually died on the night of the 11th. And we say that because when the autopsy was done on Roger, his brain was decaying. So that 18th was just the life support system being switched off.
I want to ask you about the description that we can see here of the MFJ Movement for Justice being snubbed by the family. Is that description accurate?
I think it is, because we had no dealings. We had no plan, no meetings with them. We didn't know who they were, but we knew that we had to make sure that Roger's name was, Roger was not going to be remembered because of some rioting that took place. And Movement for Justice was, I know we had meetings, whenever we had meetings in the police consultative group, there were a few occasions where the leader, Alex, would appear, and I sensed that the consultative group people were not happy with him being there. They wish he had disappeared. And we never associated with him. I'm sure I was in a room with Movement for Justice, but there was no conversation between us at all.
The reason why I ask you about this description about being snubbed is because you say that there wasn't any sort of interaction between the family and the MFJ. One reading of this description, snubbed, might suggest that an approach had been made and they had been rebuffed. So my question is around whether that is accurate, or whether actually what it's more of what you said a moment ago, that there was just never any interaction between the two of you.
No, I don't believe that we had any interaction. I mean, I knew of him because I've heard people talk about him, but I don't believe I had any interaction. I'm not convinced that the other members of our campaign had any interaction with him.
Thank you. That can come down now, please. We'll just turn up very quickly one further report on this subject. It's B17, MPS 0002796, please. And again, if we just expand the top table, please, we can see information obtained on the 6th of January 2000 and the report typed up on the 7th. Can we expand the first paragraph of this report, please? Title: Roger Sylvester Campaign. Intelligence, we can again see Windmill Tilter. And then it says this: the Movement for Justice, MFJ, do not intend to offer much support to the Roger Sylvester campaign. This is due to the Sylvester family refusing any support from the MFJ at the start of their campaign. Now, a year on, the family feel they have achieved nothing by cooperating with the authorities and are seeking help from groups like MFJ. So once again, we can see the suggestion here of support being offered and refused, and we've spoken about that in the context of the last report we've seen. I want to just ask you about the bit that says the family feel they've achieved nothing by cooperating with the authorities. What is your... How do you sort of read or interpret that? What's the accuracy of that?
That's not true. You know, we're always confident we're on the right track, and I think this, you know, we would like to seek, you know, we wanted to seek help, you know, with, no, that's not true. You know, we were getting on with our purpose for justice for Roger, and we were quite happy with the course we were on. This was what, in a year later? I mean, okay, we didn't have the inquest. We were gathering and learning what happened to Roger. We were not despondent.
Okay. Can we just expand the bit at the bottom of the page that's under the heading source comment, please? Both the MFJ and PCAC, Police Crimes Against Civilians, hope that the Sylvester family will become more militant and outspoken, in essence leads the campaign themselves. What's your response to the suggestion made at the end there that the family may not have been leading the campaign themselves?
Well, it was our campaign. We were leading it. And I think we were doing a very good job of, you know, the objective of the campaign. As I say, we were never despondent. We knew we were on the right track. I think we were not a militant family. You know, we used every opportunity to pass the message on to what happened to Roger. You know, we didn't have to be militant, and as I've said, militancy and, you know, breaking, you know, rioting and what have you, the focus becomes the riot, not what the officers did to Roger. And so there was no need to be militant. You know, there's a process that we were following, and it was the process that was there for us to follow, and we were going through that process. I mean, we were exercising our free speech and doing what bereaved families do. We weren't looking to be militant. Our job was to convey to the public, this has happened to us, it could happen to you. And it's not a nice feel. And so if you are aware of what was happening to us, you know, take note. You know, it's. I mean, I remember when Brian Douglas was hit over the head with a truncheon, one of these new truncheons, and I recall hearing it on the news. But then again, Brian Douglas was this huge guy. He was strong and what have you, and immediately I switched off, not realizing a few years down the line you would be in that position. So I was I'm sure the others were conscious that we need to let people know it could happen to them, and we were going through a lot of turmoil, And the last thing we wanted was to be militant and divert attention away from what was done to Roger on the night.
Thank you. We can take that report down now, please. We're going to look at one final report, very briefly, please, Mr. Renwick. It's B10 MPS 0001988. And we can see, if we just expand the top again, that this is a report, the report written up on the 16th of April 99, based on information provided on the 15th. We zoom out again, please. And we can see the title of this report is Roger Sylvester Funeral, 16 April 99. Intelligence, again, we can see from Windmill Tilter. I'm just going to read the text that we can see there. Alex Owolade of the Movement for Justice will be attending the above funeral. There is no intelligence to indicate that the funeral will be anything other than a dignified event. I think you say in your witness statement that you think hundreds of people came along to Roger's
there was quite a few people. I mean, it was then we realised how much Roger was loved in the community. There was more people than we anticipated.
Can I ask you what your reaction is to seeing the fact of Roger's funeral being recorded and documented in a police intelligence report?
I mean, that was a solemn time for us, a sad time for us. And, you know, we weren't being allowed the dignity to grieve privately. Well, okay, I mean, it was a public event, but to be in a state, to be, in sorrow, grieving, saying our last goodbye, and to be monitored. I mean, it's just a violation of our there was no dignity given to us. We were under scrutiny at a time where, we needed to be left, just to grieve. I mean, to say our last goodbye, Suraj.
Thank you. We can take that report down, please. Mr. Renwick, those reports that we've just gone through represent a proportion of those written by or based on intelligence from David Hagan that refer to the campaign, and I know that you refer to others in your witness statement that you've prepared. If someone were to suggest to you that the reporting on the family campaign by police officers was justified because there was a public order risk posed by the events and activities that it carried out, what would your response to that be?
Well, I mean, can you ask me that question again?
Forgive me, it wasn't one question. If someone were to suggest that the reporting that we've seen was justified because the activities the family campaign carried out posed some sort of public order threat?
No, there was no justification. We were exercising our free speech, our right to free speech, and there's a time and place. There's a place for surveillance, but I don't think it's to have surveillance on a grieving family who has lost a loved one. I think that is, what's the word I'm looking for? That's not a place for surveillance. You're grieving, they've lost somebody. We possess no threat to anybody. All we were doing was looking for answers. And to be under scrutiny because someone thinks we may cause, issues or violence or what have you, that was not us. We're looking for the truth. And that's all we were doing.
When you address this point in your witness statement, you say, "I can see no such reason for any such concern other than an assumption shaped by the simple fact that we were a black family."
Yeah, well, I'm sure that there is there's some truth in that. I mean, as I've said before, justice for black families, people of colour, justice is a bit elusive. You know, we tend not to get justice. We have to fight for it. Yes, it's what we have to go through.
Just a couple of questions about the undercover officer, David Hagan. Now, you say in your witness statement that neither you or anybody in your family knowingly had contact with someone called David Hagan at any time? No.
Absolutely not, no.
And it's not a name that would have been familiar to you?
Does not ring a bell. Didn't know he existed until now, before.
I want to ask you about sort of any subsisting concerns that you had at the time about possible infiltration into the campaign, and I'm going to refer to an example that you give in your witness statement about a burglary. This is about an individual who's a member of your family. I ask you please not to use that individual's name when
Okay.
Can you expand upon that and any concerns that you might have had about what that meant at the time?
Yeah, I mean, that individual was our secretary. She took notes, and so, she wrote her notes, the notes of the meetings that we have. So I can't remember the exact details of the burglary, but there was a burglary. I'm not sure whether she reported it, but we were conscious of incidents like that. I mean, that was just one. Another was when one of our members of the campaign, he was at cricket. He was playing cricket, and he had a call from his son saying that there are two people wanting to come in to assess the property for sale. He was asking his dad whether he didn't know he was selling the house. There was another incident where allegedly someone made a 999 call to my parents' house saying that there's a fire in the house, and so the fire brigade men sort of bulldozed themselves into the house to look for a fire, pushed past my sister and my parents to go to the back of the house to see whether there was a fire or not, when clearly there wasn't. And we were conscious of being surveyed. We thought whatever surveillance that was taking place would be maybe electronically, but certainly not a man or someone having us under surveillance. We in fact we joked about being bugged, but we laughed at it at the time. We weren't doing anything wrong, so let them do what they think they need to do. We cannot prove it, but we were very conscious of it. But that burglary, I've given you another two examples which came to mind, but it did happen.
Final few questions for you, Mr. Renwick. You say in your statement that you first found out that the family campaign had been reported on when you were contacted by Operation Hearn in 2013, is that right?
Yes.
How did discovering that information at the time impact you?
Well, me personally, as I said, we thought we were being, there was some surveillance, but we thought it was electronically, but we didn't realize that there were actual people who were monitoring us, and also, monitoring us in an indirect way. I think there's a difference between human monitoring and electronic monitoring. To be rubbing shoulders with somebody who's reporting on you, when you're trying to seek justice. I think it's not nice. It's not the thing you expected.
And then looking back from today, having now seen the extent and character of reporting on Roger, the family and the campaign, how does that impact you now?
Sorry, sorry.
No, forgive me.
Yeah.
When we look back from today, bearing in mind that you've now seen the extent of the reporting that was carried out, what's the impact on you of discovering that information?
Well, I mean, I think I didn't expect to be monitored. As I've said, I personally thought we were doing the right thing. We were exercising our freedom of speech. We were voicing our opinions. We were trying to expose what was done to Rog. And we were being monitored. I'm not happy about it, but it has happened. And I think for other people who, in future, they've got to bear that in mind. They may well be monitored whilst grieving.
And how have your experiences shaped your views about the police?
I think the police, they have I'm kind of old school. I mean, I recall Dixon at Dock Greed, where the police officer was part of the community. But it seems as though with the policing we have now is one whereby if there's you don't see them, but if there's an incident, they descend in numbers. It's as though they're not part of the community. I mean, I remember the days where you see a police officer walking the street and he would know you, you would know him. This is going way back when it's, little. And I think we need to get back to that type of policing. It's, to have, they're not seen, but when there's an incident, they come in numbers. And I mean, I have 3 young grandsons, and I shudder to think what they would go through. The way police officers treat young black males. Young black males seems to me they're an endangered species. They're treated with a lot of force, and my 3 grandsons, I hope they don't have to go through that.
Mr. Renwick, those are all the questions that I have for you. Is there anything that you would like to say to the inquiry now that you have the opportunity to do so?
Well, there's a place for surveillance, and surveilling grieving families at that vulnerable time is not the time when you're looking for answers. For me personally, when you lose somebody, there's a different stages of grief. And in Roger's case, myself and for the rest of my family, that grieving process is not linear, where you go from what's the first one? Anger. I can't remember, but it's not. It doesn't go through the stages linearly. So you go from one stage where I think one of the stages where we spent a lot of time was bargaining, where we looking for truth, and then the next stage was depression. And I think I seem to have forgotten the first 2: denial, anger, and But you don't go through that stage linearly. In Death in Custody, we spend a lot of time in asking questions, and it doesn't help help you mentally, and because the process was so long and drawn out. You find yourself going, back to stages when you should really get towards the acceptance at the end, and the whole process of going through this Death in Custody procedures don't allow you to grieve properly. You get there eventually, but it's non-linear.
Thank you, Mr. Renwick. Those are all of my questions for you.
Thank you.
We're now going to break for 15 minutes. The purpose of this is twofold. It's to let the transcribers have a break and you, and also if there are any questions that people want counsel to the inquiry to ask, then now's the time for them to put them to him.
Okay.
Will you bear with us while we do that?
Yes, of
Thank you.
course.
So I understand there to be no Rule 10 questions, but there will be some brief re-examination.
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Renwick, notwithstanding the many years since Roger's death and the various legal proceedings that have taken place, do I understand correctly that this is in fact the first time that you personally have given evidence?
Yes, it is. Yeah, my mother has, and my cousin Anne, who's now deceased, did at the inquest, but for me, the first.
Can I ask you specifically about In fact, those are the end of my questions. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I'd just like to add, yeah, one of the, I think I can't remember who was that, my cousin, yeah, we think is meaningless, this apology.
And by meaningless, do I understand part of the point to be the question of if you're apologising, what you're apologising for?
Exactly. I mean, one of my cousins suggested, oh, well, they're only apologising because they've been caught with their pants down. Literally. And we're apologising for what we know is what we don't know. They're not apologising. We don't know what we don't know, but they're only apologising because of what we know, and it's because they've been caught with their pants down.
Maybe that's a good time to sit down, sir.
Mr. Renwick, thank you for taking the trouble to make a witness statement and to attend the hearing and to give oral evidence in the calm and reasonable manner that you have. It is invariably impressive to hear people who have gone through great personal tragedies like you and your family be able to speak about them in a manner that doesn't betray bitterness and rancour and excessive emotion, but calmness and reasonableness. And I'm, if I may say so, I'm not only grateful but impressed. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for giving me the opportunity
Yeah.
to do this on behalf of my parents and Roger.
May I just raise two matters? First, the impression that I have from your evidence is that although you think it wrong, even outrageous, that you and your family's campaign were reported upon by an undercover police officer, nevertheless the contents of the reports about what it is one officer in particular, HN81, you're satisfied that the contents of what he says are broadly speaking true. Is that fair?
Some of it's true, but not. Yeah, yes. I mean, we've had no contact with friends of Roger or
Friends of Roger
for
Sylvester.
Justice, Movement for Justice. No.
Yeah. But broadly, what the tenor of the reports is that your campaign was run by you as a family,
As a family campaign.
and you did not want disorder or any intrusion by those who might cause it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Family led.
May I ask a question of you, only for information purposes, but is there a report of Mr. Justice Andrew Collins's ruling?
I'm sure we can obtain it.
I'd be grateful if you would, because I'm far from sure that I can get it on Bailey, and I certainly can't unless I know the name and title reference.
So, would you mind possibly if I ask a follow-up question to the issue you raised about
Of course.
the efficacy of the reporting?
Absolutely.
Certainly insofar as the reporting describes the family leading the campaign, the family being, I think, moderate or something to that effect, wholly accurate, is that right?
Yes, we were always moderate. We moderated our message throughout.
But would it be fair to say that you consider some of the reporting to be either inaccurate or portraying prejudice? And if I could just remind you of one example. The report of the march being predominantly young black youth.
Mm-hmm.
Is that an example where, whether or not it's accurate or inaccurate, it betrays a perception that is not justified?
Yeah, I mean, it was a mix. It wasn't young, just young. I'm pretty sure there were white people there. It was people who felt, aggrieved. So it was not just predominantly young black people.
And the predominantly young black youth goes to the prejudice or stereotype of danger.
Yeah. Yes, it does. Stereotyping.
So I'm very grateful. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed. I want now to ask my team what we are going to do next, whether we're going to resume evidence with other witnesses in the near future, or whether we're going to have a long lunch break. Forgive me while I do that.
Okay.
It doesn't concern you. And if
Thank
you
you.
want to go now, by all means do.
Okay.
But you can sit and wait and listen if you wish to.
Okay.
Yes.
So I understand that the intention is to rise now and then resume again at about 20 past.
Yes, very well. Then that's what we'll do. It is good afternoon. Proceedings for the rest of today will be broadcast but by sound only after 10 minutes have elapsed. Those with mobile devices in the anteroom to the hearing room may use them to report what they have heard in the hearing room, but only after 10 minutes have elapsed since the event that they're reporting. They may not be used for recording. Yes.
Repeat after me. I swear by Almighty God
I swear by Almighty God
that the evidence I shall give
that the evidence I shall give
shall be the truth,
shall be the truth,
the whole truth,
the whole truth,
and nothing but the truth.
and nothing but the truth.
Repeat after me. I swear by Almighty God
I swear by Almighty God
that the evidence I shall give
that the evidence I shall give
shall be the truth,
shall be the truth,
the whole truth,
the whole truth,
and nothing but the truth.
and nothing but the truth.
Yes.
Good afternoon. Thank you for attending to give evidence to the inquiry. I will refer to you throughout this hearing as MSS and MWS because you have been granted anonymity. Either of you can ask to have a break at any time. We will accommodate that. And if you need me to repeat or rephrase a question, please let me know and I will do so. I will now address each of you separately in respect of the statements you have each provided to the inquiry. Can we show on screen, please, UCPI 5038377. That's at tab A2 of your bundle, sir. MSS, you gave a signed witness statement to the inquiry consisting of 22 pages dated 13th of June 2025. Do you recognize the document on the screen?
I do.
Is this your witness statement?
It is.
Could we go to the last page of the statement, please? Is that your signature?
It is.
And can you confirm that the contents of this witness statement are true and correct to the best of your knowledge and belief?
I can confirm that. I just say that where I mention investigations by number, that I say there are two, but there are different elements. So when I talk about them today, I'll probably just refer to them by name, if that's okay.
That should be fine. Thank you. You produced a second witness statement as well. Could we have, if you take that document down, please? Could we have UCPI 5039437 on screen? MSS, is this, do you recognize this statement as yours as well?
Yes, I do.
And if we could go to the last page, is that your signature?
Yes, it is.
And can you confirm that the contents of this witness statement is true and correct to the best of your knowledge and belief?
Yes, I can.
Thank you. That puts your witness statement into evidence. I will now address MWS. Could we have on screen, please, document UCPI 5038379. That's a tab A1 of your folder, sir. MWS, you gave a signed witness statement to the inquiry consisting of 86 pages dated 6th of June 2025. Do you recognize this document on the screen?
Yes.
Is this your witness statement?
Yes, it is.
Can we go to the last page, please, the witness statement? Is this your signature?
Yes, it is.
And can you confirm that the contents of your witness statement are true and correct to the best of your knowledge and belief?
Yes.
Thank you. If we could take that statement down, and if we could put up UCPI 5039441. MWS, you produced a second witness statement. Do you recognize this document?
Yes.
And it's dated 26th of November 2025. Is that right?
Yes.
And that's your witness statement?
Yes, it is.
And if we go to the last page, please. Is that your signature?
Yes, it is.
And are the contents of that witness statement true and correct to the best of your knowledge?
Yes, it is.
I've been handed a note. If you could perhaps speak a little bit louder, that would be good. Thank you so much. Just a note, when I refer to statements in my questions, unless specifically stated, I will be referring to your first witness statements. MSS, you mentioned in your own statement that you broadly agree with and adopt the evidence set out in MWS's first witness statement. Is that still the case?
That is.
Thank you. Before I start, I'm going to give you a very high-level indication of the areas of questions which I will be covering. I'm going to start with Michael's life and his character. I want to understand the kind of person Michael was. I'll go into the initial police investigation into Michael's death and the family's experience of its engagement with the police during the initial investigation. I'll ask questions about the family's criticism of the police and the decision to approach the media independently. I'll then move on to ask about the formation of the family campaign for justice for Michael. I'll move on then to the inquest, the nature of the inquest, the verdict, and the impact it had on the investigation. I will ask you questions about undercover police surveillance, the family's campaign. I'll be referring throughout to the final report produced by the Police Complaints Authority into the initial investigation, and some of the key conclusions and assessments it reached of the actions and attitudes of some police officers. I will refer to this report as the PCA report. And finally, I will ask about the impact on yourselves and your family in its long journey to secure justice for Michael. Could we have up on the screen, please, OS2 photo 1? Michael was your brother. This is a photo of Michael. Do you recall when approximately this was taken?
I think it was taken, it would have been taken maybe a few months before he started to become unwell.
And may I start by asking you, please, to tell us a little bit about Michael, what kind of person he was and how you and your family remember him.
It's quite, we've been here so many times before and it's quite difficult to talk about.
I understand.
About this, but he's our sibling and we're quite a big family, and I think he was notable because he was actually very kind of a quiet, gentle person. Not above jokes and cheekiness, but he was one of my younger siblings, and I think the word that summed him up was just kindness. He was kind and thoughtful of people, kind of never self-promoting or putting himself above people, which is perhaps when his music career took off and he became well known. It was a real joy and delight for us all, because he wasn't a pushy person or a flamboyant person, and he was really kind of inclusive. And by that I mean, when he was having success, he sought to include us. We'd go to recordings, or I played the violin really badly at school, but he invited me to be part of a video that they did. He was always almost self-deprecating. He was always thinking about how other people might benefit from where he was, what he was doing. And I know people always speak well of the dead and their siblings, but he just was a really kind and gentle person, and a very quiet, kind of pivotal person in the family.
What was he like as a child?
Because we're a large family, we're all in to have different relationships with each other. For me, he was quite. I was struck by his quietness, his gentleness. I think he was I remember occasions where, I don't know, maybe as siblings we were laughing at another sibling, and he was never involved in that. He would never kind of join in any kind of teasing or anything, and he'd always look out for people. I remember even though I was his oldest sister, he would check in, you know, on me, and that's my childhood memory of him, always being thoughtful. One of my brothers broke his leg, and I remember Mike being really, you know, caring of him, sort of nurturing him and holding him and checking he wasn't in pain. He was, you know, my sibling was quite little, but I have those sorts of memories of just how attentive to other people's needs that he was, even as a child.
Did he enjoy school when he was growing up?
Yeah, he did enjoy school. We were kind of all a bit weird. We all loved school, and he enjoyed that. I remember him going to school one day when he wasn't very well, and he was just desperate to go.
We know he was a talented musician. Was he always interested in music growing up? Was that a big thing for him?
I don't remember him being interested in music when he was very little, when we were at school particularly, but he was a singer. We sang in a church choir, and he had a far better voice than any of the rest of us. He often sang the solo and was just very, I don't know, the word meek doesn't really describe it, but he was always, he did it, but was always really unassuming about that. I remember an occasion where I was singing a solo, and I had to sing the word Psalms, and it begins with a P, and for some reason I kept reading it with the word P, and he came and helped me practice so I could get it right, just even though it would have made much more sense for him to have done it because his voice was better, and etc. But those little things were examples of what he was like as a child and as a person.
And apart from music, and what other activities did he enjoy outside of school?
Sports, I mean, particularly with you know, my brothers, they play sports. We just did, you know, we had a little car washing round. We'd go around with our bucket of water and wash cars for our neighbours and things. We just did gentle things. We were quite a quiet family. We didn't do lots of activities, but we entertained each other and played with each other. I remember sitting and listening to stories together. There were some traditional Ghanaian stories that we'd sometimes be told, and we particularly loved, and we'd rehearse them with each other. But and he did well at school. He just wasn't any trouble, ever any trouble.
Could we take down that photo now, please, and put up in its place OS4 photo 3? Michael became part of the group Double Trouble, and they enjoyed considerable success as well. How did you and your family feel about his music career?
In some respects, because he wasn't a flashy person, it was surprising but also really delighting. Everyone was so happy for him, and you could really see him come alive and what was happening, and just how thoughtful he was about it, wanting to kind of represent the family well. You know, we're a family of kind of quite high moral values and religious family, and he wanted to make sure that his music career was still in line with us as a family. And as I said, you know, including us. I remember myself and some of the siblings going to recordings. He was inclusive and joyful, and I think to some degree he just was really grateful for the success that they had and wanted to build on that.
Thank you. You can take that photo down now. It has been suggested that Michael experienced some mental health difficulties in his late 20s. Is that accurate?
It is.
How did this affect him?
I think it was really very, very difficult. It was, I personally remember him feeling really saddened by it and feeling maybe, I remember him being sad, being confused by it, not feeling he wasn't in control of that and wanting to do what he could to kind of recover and get better, and just desperately trying to get back on track in his life. I remember the sense that, I guess, mental health problems cause people to feel out of control of themselves, and that was really very difficult for him to know that his intention, where he wanted to be was one place, but how things were mapping out were not the direction he wanted to go in. I remember when he had, at times when he was unwell, he was always saying, "I'm really sorry." He was really apologetic to us as a family, and we were trying to support him, but he was aware of the impact it was having on people, having to, things that happened, having to take him to hospital, or times he was confused or not sleeping, and he kept saying, he'd always say, "I'm really sorry." And we'd just say, it's not about being sorry, we're here, you would do this for any of us, and we're here to support you.
Was he positive about his future in any way?
Yeah, he was really determined. He was determined to overcome it, not to let it kind of defeat him. And it wasn't a straight road. It had ups and downs, and sometimes he'd do better, and other times he would be less well. And when things started to deteriorate, he was always really kind of just so desperately keen to try and get his life back on track and not be at the mercy of this illness that came and went.
I'm going to move on now to the attack on the 28th of January 1997. I appreciate I'm asking you both to relive a very painful period. Again, if either of you need a pause or a break, simply let the chair know. This was the day Michael was attacked that resulted in him receiving severe burns and being taken to hospital. Is that right?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
I want to ask you now about your family's initial contact with police on the day of the attack. MWS, I'm going to direct these questions to you. I don't need to take you there, but according to your statement at paragraph 91, you state that your family had first contact with the police at the family home on the night of the attack on 28th of January 1997. Is that correct?
Yes.
Were you at home at the time?
Yes.
And can you recall what was the reason for the officers visiting your home?
They came to inform us that Michael had set fire to himself and he had been taken to hospital. That was the summary of what they told us.
And what was their tone and manner like when they told you that?
They were reporting what they say were what they knew.
I was asking you about the withdrawal of D.I. Williams from the investigation. Is it right that DCI Robin Scott took over as a senior officer after that?
Yes.
And after that meeting at the home, is it roughly accurate that meetings took place between the family and the police every fortnight?
With the police, yes, about.
Yes. And this was mainly with the family liaison officers, is that right?
That's right, yes.
Now, when you spoke to the police during these meetings, did they claim to know what happened to Michael?
When we spoke to the police, we wanted to know what they were doing with the investigation, to know how they were progressing the investigation.
Did they have a theory as to what happened to Michael?
They simply didn't believe us. They suggested that he had did it to himself.
And how sure about that did they come across?
They were sure. They said there was nothing to suggest that anybody else was involved. This is words that stay with me from meetings with the police.
And did they at any stage entertain the possibility of something other than suicide?
No.
And this was the case even though they were aware of what Michael had said to you?
They were aware, but I don't believe they took it as a line to examine.
What was DCI Scott's response when you and your family asked him to investigate Michael's death, as you believed it was not a suicide?
He was unbelieving. He suggested that we couldn't accept that Michael had done this to himself, and as I said, there was nothing to suggest that anybody else was involved, and they were running their investigation on that basis.
Your family's relationship with DCI Scott and his team deteriorated and eventually broke down completely around the time of the inquest, which was in September 1998. Is that roughly accurate?
What's accurate is that he didn't enjoy being asked questions about how they were investigating, examining Michael's death, what they were doing, what resources were being deployed, what information they had been received, and when we asked questions regarding their investigation, the meetings became extremely defensive on their part, and I would go and say that they didn't accept that we would dare to question them and ask and question their authority and their assessment of what had happened. So to say that that the relationship had broken down is, we were simply asking questions based on what we knew, and on any reading you would need to rule in or rule out. And my view is the meetings I had with the police there, they were unwilling to examine anything other than that Michael had done this to himself.
Can we have up on screen, please, UCPI 50386992. That's tab A19 of your bundle, sir. We could go to page 1, paragraph 2. It reads, P1 Benson says about making a complaint that he told DCI Scott that he wanted to make a complaint about the investigation and about how P2 had been treated. DCI Scott told him that any complaint would seriously undermine the morale of the investigating team and affect how they would undertake the investigation. P1 Manson says he took this as a veiled threat and it made him feel powerless to try to challenge what was happening. If we go to the next paragraph, paragraph 3, P3 Benson says she also raised the issue of a complaint, but cannot be sure to whom. She says she was told, either by DCI Scott or someone else in his presence, not to complain because the people working on the inquiry might not pursue it with as much enthusiasm and vigor. She says such threats were implied on several occasions, and they made her feel anxious and afraid of antagonizing the officers for fear that they would withdraw their efforts further. MSS, may I direct questions to you now? Do you recall getting a similar response from DCI Scott as these examples?
I do.
And did you discuss this or other such responses among your family?
We did. We talked about it because they said, more than one person said it to me in that way. Be reasonable. How can you expect people who are being criticised to do a good job, to be motivated? The word that kept being used was motivate. How do you expect them to be motivated if you're criticising them? And I couldn't believe what I was hearing. There was the suggestion that if we made waves, that could impact and negatively impact the investigation. Was unbelievable to hear, and also frightening, because what mattered to us was that belatedly they undertook the appropriate investigation. And I think MWS mentioned possibly before about resources. They imply that if we complained, if we spoke to press, if we did various things, that they would dilute the limited resources and they would not be directed where attention should be. So we felt between a rock and a hard place. They weren't doing what they should have been. And whenever we tried to ask them or suggest that we would complain so that more appropriate action could be taken, they said that it could make things worse. It was really hard to know what was the right course of action to take.
And what was the general feeling about this within your family? You don't have to mention any names, but the general feeling among members of yourself and members of your family to this situation that you found yourselves in with the police. How did it make you feel?
I remember a sense of real disbelief that we were being told this, but also a real anxiety that what if this was the case? What if unintentionally we hampered things? Maybe we should hold off from complaining until later if it was going to impede the investigation. Then I remember that being discussed at length, but in the end we decided this is insanity. We have to. This was an opportunity, a window of opportunity that existed. They had already absolutely not done what they should have in the first 12 hours, as they talk about so often, but subsequently those first 16 days and thereafter. And we couldn't run the risk of just waiting, just being fobbed off by them and holding off from complaining. And it was a risk that we had to take because nothing was being done.
You eventually engaged the services of a solicitor, is that right?
That's right.
And can you tell us who this was?
It's Michael Short and of Bindman's.
And what was DCI Scott's reaction when you told him that you had engaged legal advice?
I remember one conversation with him where I think I'd said that NWS had engaged, been the one, and he said, "I can't believe you let him do that." And I remember being shocked. Obviously, I can't remember the exact words, but he implied that why did I let him do that? And I said, we need to get answers. We need to know that you guys are doing it, taking things seriously, and we can't run the risk of losing more time.
Same document. Can we go to page 2, please, paragraph 3? Starting on 2, that's it. Thank you. We can see that on 27th of March 1997, a letter was sent to the police from your solicitor, Mr. Schwartz. And copies of the letter were also sent to the then Commissioner of Police, Sir Paul Condon, and the then Home Secretary, Jack Straw. And the letter makes reference to the complaints by the family about the police investigation. Could we go, please, to the end of the following paragraph at the top of page 3? Subsequently, a report was prepared for Assistant Commissioner Dunn about Michael's case, to which an addendum was added describing the family as openly hostile. What was your reaction to hearing the officer describe your family as openly hostile?
I mean, the only way I can describe it is manipulative. Throughout the documentation, there's reference to us as hostile, rather than, and the manipulation that's been engaged throughout with the use of language is, it's shocking, but it's really deeply hurtful. Rather than recognising that we were people who are asking legitimate questions in a legitimate manner, as time was running away and the possibility of trying to find the appropriate answers was happening, rather than recognise that it's that they chose to characterise us as hostile. Not at any point did they do what any thoughtful, sensible person would have asked, which was ask why. You know, why is this family upset? Why are they asking questions? Why even if they thought we were hostile, why might they be hostile? They didn't stop and ask, what's going on here? What have we done? What have we not done? What do we need to be held account to? What actions do we need to take to address the fact that this family, who have never been in the eyes of any legal proceedings ever or police issues ever, why is this family suddenly seeming so, in inverted commas, hostile? So they just jumped to the conclusion that about us and used language to other people, including the press, including, from what we understand, the coroner, to characterise us in a certain way, as if it was something that came from us innately, rather than a direct result of their actions and their inactions. And that's incredibly, incredibly hurtful, especially given what we were going through.
I'm going to read out another passage from MWS's witness statement. There's no need to put it up on screen. It's page 34, paragraph 104, and for the transcript, it's document UCPI 5038379 at tab A1. MWS claims he met with DCI Scott around 5 times. Is that correct?
Yes.
And at paragraph 104, you state the following. During one of those visits, DCI Scott made a particularly hurtful and, as it turned out, inaccurate comment about Michael. He said something along the lines that Michael had caused his own death and that the family did not want to accept it. And that was why we were blaming others, the police. Now, we don't know if these were his exact words, but do you recall learning about that exchange, if I may ask you, MSS?
Asking me.
I was going to ask MSS, but I could ask either of you.
I'm sorry, would you say that again, please?
The paragraph I just read out, we don't know if these were his exact words, but do you recall learning about that?
I do.
And hearing it again now, how does it make you feel?
I've used the word manipulation. I think that's really what it felt like. It felt like they were manipulating our vulnerability and trying to make us feel afraid to speak up and to ask to talk about it. I remember thinking, you know, if it transpires they're right, and if this was Mike hurting himself, then I'm prepared to bear that. But what they were trying to do is make us feel afraid. If we are saying the police are not investigating properly and we're wrong, how embarrassed we would be, how ashamed we would be. And I just thought, this is too important to worry about that. What we need to know is what's happened, especially given that he had said clearly to my siblings, unambiguously, that he'd been attacked.
So, about to start a different topic. Might now be an appropriate time to break for lunch.
Yes, it would, and we will resume as soon as possible after 1:15.